Eating for health, it's a term I coined 30 years ago, and I created eating for health as an alternative to the USDA 4-food group, My Plate, pyramid, and all that. And I really feel it's an inspired kind of approach to nutrition. So it's modern and traditional food and self-healing wisdom. So it's always been holistic. What is eating for health? Eating for health is an approach to healthy eating. It's not a diet. It's not a protocol. It's not a program. It's an approach. It reflects a relationship to food based on choice, gratitude, sound science, sustainability, and joy. So if we don't bring joy to the table, we're not eating for health. Because we have such a beautifully diverse group, many health practitioners and health advocates and individuals looking to create health, I want to share a nutrition conversation begins with inquiry. It doesn't begin with research. It doesn't begin with data. It doesn't begin with comparative study or double blind. It's like, individuals, I'm talking to you, you're talking to yourself, we're asking these questions. And when we start with inquiry, we empower people. We put the intelligence in their corner. The spotlight of innate intelligence shines on them. And the question I always start with are, what are healthy foods you like to eat? And I've never heard anyone give a poor answer to that. They always say it's usually a protein or a vegetable or some fruits or something that's wholesome. Then I'll typically will ask, what foods are in season now and grown locally you could eat? So how can you expand the things that you know and like with the things that nature and spirit provided for us in this moment? So if we were in a facilitated discussion, I'd ask for 3 or 4 people to share what's in season and what do you like and where do you get it and how do you prepare it, but I'm going to have to move on. Next, what cultural foods do you eat that reflect your heritage? And some people don't even have a connection to heritage, but we all came from different places and different tribes, and we all have different cultural foods for celebrating, for mourning, for birthdays, and just for survival. So looking at self as a representative of culture and ancestry really empowers us and gives us a place to look for foods that support us. What do you eat when you're hungry, angry, lonely, and tired? Oh boy. Well, that's usually when we grab for whatever comfort foods there are. And there's no problem with that. Food is very comforting. Food is very gratifying. Food is one area where we have choice, we have control, or at least we think we do, So what could be satisfying health supportive alternatives? So if somebody says, I grab chips, I grab cookies, I grab soda, I grab Coke, whatever they grab, I go, oh, that's really cool. How much? How often? How do you like it? I don't sort of go bad choice, because that basically ends the conversation. It's just the understanding that humans will nourish themselves emotionally with food often. And then what would be some satisfying for you health supportive alternatives? Again, let me think about that. And they'll come up with something that might be interesting. And have you ever practiced mindful eating? Well, what is mindful eating to you? And most people can say, mindful eating, it's paying attention to what I eat. And then what anchors would remind you to eat mindfully more often? And in a group question, you could say, oh, I light a candle, I say a prayer, I set the table, I do some breathing, I settle down, I turn off the stereo, the TV, those kinds of things. So for all of us, professional, non-professional, social, beginning with inquiry to ourselves and to our friends and our family, because even in a family of four, you have four different people, four different eating patterns, four different everythings. So it's something that we have to really take into consideration. Food wisdom from the Ayurveda Indian tradition. I like this. When diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. Well, that's a little heavy stated, but still the healing of the body, the self-healing capacity is not from medicine alone, it's from nourishment and regeneration. And when the diet is right or becomes right, medicine is of no need. Now, again, it's a big statement, but it's a goal. It's a goal to use food as medicine, is medicine. And for people who are not well, it's important for them to recognize that as they improve the quality of the food and the thoughtfulness of the food and the specificity of the foods, they may be less dependent on medicine, or the food becomes their medicine or the herbs. This is fairly common, and this is even old data, standard American diet food facts. And by now I would call it standard commercial Western dietary food facts, because it's not just America. We have exported this to the world. Significant amount of sucrose, which is typically from beets, which are typically genetically modified, or quite a bit of sugar in the form of high fructose corn syrup, which is from corn, which has been genetically modified. And later in the conversation, I'll explain the genetically modified importance of relevance of that. 46 gallons of sugar sweetened beverage. So what we're seeing is various forms of simple sugars, quite a lot of coffee, quite a lot of fat and cheese. And then what I put in red, which to me is the conversation that we're not having enough, is unmeasurable, substantial amounts of pesticides, herbicide, preservatives, additives, and not food ingredients. And the average person doesn't think about that. So there's the image of the standard Western diet. It's highly refined and inflammatory, and inflammation is what drives mental, physical, emotional, social, environmental dis-ease. I'll say that again. It's not just personal dis-ease. It's not just personal illness, it's environmental illness. Inflammation or killing the plants, killing the bees, killing the bugs, killing the soil. And then it's damaging parts of ourselves. And we see these are from, eating a highly refined, or what they now call it, ultra refined diet. Interesting note here, different classes of foods. We all don't have to eat perfectly. We all are not able to get perfectly grown organic food every second of every day. It's just not going to happen. But the first class is unprocessed and minimally processed foods. So it's a food that has a single name. It's a nut, it's a chicken, it's a glass of milk. And minimally processed means it may be heated or it may be dried, but it's not taken apart and put together. So that's primary food, and that's actually food. The second and third classes are processed culinary ingredients and processed foods. And these are becoming food products or secondary products from primary food. And that's plenty of it. You see soft drinks and beer and oil and beans and things of that nature. But with these that are typically packaged and processed and prepared, there are always preservatives, additives, often colors, often unlabeled ingredients. And then the fourth, and those are not great. They may not be horrible or they may not be catastrophic, but they're not health promoting. They provide calories, they provide some nourishment. So for a starving person, they would be pretty good, but for a healthy person, they're really fairly mediocre. And then the fourth is ultra processed food. And there you see all kinds of food products and lunch meats and additives and colors and so forth. So I thought this was an interesting visual on the hamburger. A hamburger is not the problem per se, but you could have a class 3 hamburger, which is still not one. Beef would be one. High, grass-fed, pastured beef would be a primary food. And again, there's reasons to not eat beef or not, but at least it's a nourishing food that ate grass that was appropriate for the development of that animal and had minimum amount of pesticides, herbicides, or hormones. Okay. And so again, there's better and worse meat, but class 3 would be a homemade burger with homemade mayo and Emmenthal cheese. Emmenthal's like a Swiss cheese. And that one looks like kind of the gourmet burger that now costs $20 where I live most of the time. It's crazy how expensive it is. But when you add industrial cheddar cheese and industrial mayo and bacon and ultra-processed meat, which looks kind of like your fast food burger, which actually looks kind of colorful and interesting, there's really quite a lot of additives that are harmful. So I think the point I make to people is people who eat meat have health problems, more so from the additives and the processing and the hormones given the animals than meat itself. People who eat dairy have more health problems from the way the cows are given corn and soy, they're not eating grass. And the corn and soy are genetically modified, and there's preservatives and antibiotics, and then that filters into the milk. So there are cultures throughout time that have had meat and milk and yogurt that are just wild, natural products, and they're fine. There are people who eat, wheat and gluten, other places that are fine. So let's get into this, what ultra-processed food looks like. Ultra-processed food concerned by people whose dietary pattern is in the ultra-processed quadrant 5 are things that are mass-produced packaged foods and then often bred low in fiber. Then I highlighted number 2, frozen and shelf-stable ready meals. I don't know about you, but many of the people I see are buying food that's frozen and reheated, buying these pre-made foods, and even celebrities are making pre-made foods and so forth. But we don't really know what's in those foods. They're not very good ingredients, and they often are ultra-processed, even meat. I had a turkey loaf the other day at a friend's house, and I didn't say anything because I aim to stay peaceful and mindful at the table. But that turkey loaf did not taste like turkey that I eat. It did not taste like a turkey loaf Chris Bauman would make. It was from a food store, and it was highly refined, and it was ultra refined, and it was an animal protein. Oh, well, I didn't eat too much of it. And then fast food dishes, pastry buns and cakes, breakfast cereals, biscuits, and then you have all the soft drinks and confection, which are sugar desserts. And then you have the meat products and reconstituted meat products and the sugar and artificially sweetened carbonated beverages. What stands out to me as an ultra refined ingredient are flour products. Now, I'm not saying don't ever eat bread, don't ever eat a pastry, don't ever eat a cookie. You can, but go for the whole grain varieties and realize that these refined processed foods are what really accelerate inflammation, obesity, diabetes, and other kinds of illnesses of that nature. Ultra-processed foods hazardous to health and weight management. When we look at people and you go, wow, look at that person. Somebody said today, my friend used to be thin as a rail and now they're ginormous. And again, I didn't make any judgment or statement. I just went, gosh, I hope that they can find eating for health as a path forward. But what makes these ultra-processed foods problematic? They're easy to choose, they're fast to consume, and they are pleasurable. They are a drug. So that's the deal. I go, why do you eat that food? They go, it makes me feel good. I go, well, it's hard to argue with that, but how long does it make you feel good? Often higher energy density, that means caloric, often lower in protein because protein's pricey. And then I bolded, it's lower in phytonutrients or phytochemicals, which are compounds that are anti-inflammatory and very protective against viruses, very protective against cancer, very protective against environmental pollutants. So the reason to eat fruits and veg, which is usually the standard mantra, is these phytonutrients, but there's different concentration of phytonutrients in high quality versus mediocre versus low quality produce. And then you can read lower in vitamin minerals, higher in salt, refined carbs, high saturated fats, low omegas. And then the bottom, I think, is super important, is these ultra processed foods, which could be meat, could be dairy, could be breads, could be beverages, could be pre-made smoothies, very bad for gut microbiota and immune function. So unfortunately, we're all immune challenged. We're all dealing with challenging antigens in the environment. So if we have a heads up, we go, man, I have to take care of my immune system. I have to pass on that extra helping of sweet dessert or extra helping of ultra processed food, or any helping for that matter. High consumption of ultra processed foods are associated with increased risk of chronic disease. And this is usually the lead conversation in a nutrition talk, that people who eat refined foods are much higher incidence, prevalence of obesity, metabolic syndrome, which are various sugar disorders, including prediabetes and diabetes. It becomes diabetes, type 2 diabetes, cardio disease, asthma, this whole respiratory problem that's very common this time of year. A lot of people are coughing, is aggravated by inflammatory foods. Ultra processed food with chemicals will be more pushing that direction. Elderly who are frail, I have tea in the morning with my older guys, and they're eating white flour pastry, and they used to drink green tea. I had them all, I didn't have them, but they all sort of leaned into the tea and fruit morning routine with me, and now they've kind of slipped back into the coffee and pastry routine because it gets them awake. Depression and behavior disorder. This is clearly a very big problem for teens and elders and all kinds of people. Irritable bowel and inflammatory bowel disease. Oh, look at that. So there's our happy, healthy, eating for health, whole foods, and anti-inflammatory. And I'll make an editorial comment. It helps to have money. And it's hard if you don't have money to get this quality of food. So with the affordable nutrition course that we have, part of it is to build society support for people to get access to this type of food. Wellness is a birthright, but wellness cannot be achieved without high quality food. So we need businesses, government, subsidies for quality food, because cheap food, sick food is highly subsidized, and that's what people get because that's basically what they can pay for. So that's the model I created, and graphic credit to Chris Bauman for the original design. And it's a beautiful model. It has beverages on the outer circle. So I think in some conversations, I start with liquids because our body is 60 to 70% liquid. And as we get older, we get dehydrated. As we get dehydrated, we become acidic and we turn into prunes. You look at older people, their skin's dry and wrinkled, and we really need to maintain high levels of hydration and quality hydration. And then there's a circle of carbohydrates that I break into leafy veg and crunchy veg and unrefined starch and seasonal fruits. And then my favorite circle is what I call booster foods. And these are condiments with remarkable phytonutrient and trace mineral content. spices, herbs, nutritional yeast, and algae. And then a protein circle and fats and oils and seeds in the center. So in your integrative health manual, this is nicely discussed. They're eating for health food categories, and take a look at this and see which category you want to focus on improving. And I start with water and tea. If you drink coffee, fine, but you can drink coffee and tea and fresh juice, all the above. And you can drink broths as well. But having tea, you're getting plants in water, and the plants provide important phytonutrients and trace minerals to enrich your water and also protect against contaminants in water. And then, of course, veg, protein, fats, grains, fruit, and then herbs and spices. And the herbs and spices are truly medicinal, and they form the flavors of health, which characterize Asian food, Indian food, African food, Hispanic food, Mediterranean food, and just cultural food as those herbs and spices. So getting a good spice rack and good herb shelf and starting to put them in, they take average food and make them remarkable. Keys to positive food choices: diversity. Interesting, just like human beings in society. Diversity is really important. Wholeness, freshness. And then I have a term called plant-centric, because I don't like the duality of animal, vegetable, raw, cooked, east, west. Of course, the earth is plant-centric. We live out of the earth, from the earth. The animals eat the food of the earth. We eat the food of the earth, plant-centric. It doesn't have to, if you say plant-based, in many people, they've defined it categorically as I don't eat animals, I don't eat fish, etc. Now, again, if people want to eat that way, more power to them. I think it's great. I'm not saying it's not, but it should not be divisive. So the central concept is supporting plant life in your community, plant life in your gut, that's your internal community, and plant life in your family, being plant-centric. And then I have a term called soul, seasonal, organic, unadulterated, local, and affordable. So if it's not affordable, it's just not going to happen. This is a good slide for best and worst foods and food habits. So I call problematic things nutrition bandits. Take a look at that. And I call the great foods, the healing foods, the therapeutic regenerative foods, nutrition heroes. And you can see I bolded mindful eating and dark chocolate. So the dark chocolate is an homage to my wife and to Cheryl and to others. People go, I have a chocolate problem. No, you don't if it's dark enough. Chocolate is a powerful medicinal food that complements other foods. So it's okay. I don't want to be too restrictive. I want to be open. I want to have choice. I want to have joy. I want to have energy. I want to have celebration. That's eating for health. So this is a biggie. I just put an article together yesterday and today on genetically modified foods. And they came into the food chain somewhere between 1991 and 1996. So they started to creep in quietly. And I'd love to go through all the talking points, but I don't have time for this conversation. But the ones that are significant that people don't know is your commercial variety of corn, commercial soy, commercial tomatoes, rapeseed is canola oil. And potatoes, particularly, are often genetically modified. And then you see rice and peas and beets and squash and aspartame, even zucchini apples and alfalfa. So looking at that list, you go, holy cow, it's common staple foods. What about Italian food, tomato and cheese and bread and all that? Well, if it's organic, it's fine. If it's locally grown and unsprayed, if it came out of your backyard, fine. But if it's commercial big industrial farming, it will be genetically modified. And in all fairness, I gave the rationale behind why it's good to genetically modified food, because it's a big conversation. There is a reason that people are doing it, but it has not been tested in terms of long-term health consequences. So let's move on. And then glyphosate is a chemical fertilizer that's in Roundup. And glyphosate is saturated on commercial wheat. And people eat a lot of wheat. People eat a lot of flour. And it's also in this high fructose corn syrup. It's in soy protein, so a lot of non-meat proteins of a commercial variety or GMO foods. Cows are fed GMO corn. Potatoes are given this glyphosate pesticide. So that happy meal, in addition to not being very nutrient dense, is really high in antigenic chemicals that trigger inflammation and autoimmune and hyperimmune response that can lead to endocrine and organ dysfunction. Oh boy. So here's a chart that shows the spike in obesity when GMO with glyphosate joined the food chain in the mid-90s. I mean, it was going on, and there are people who eat these same foods without these food additives or seed changes that don't have this crazy blow up and diabetes and obesity and other kinds of inflammatory conditions. So I want you to study this on your own time when you have more time to kind of dig into it and read the side points. But it is somewhat genotoxic, and it does damage mitochondria, which lower energy production, and it does deplete the microbiome of friendly bacteria, and it does exacerbate inflammation and inhibit recovery. Then the thing is individual sensitivity, tolerance, and adaptive protective nutrients. So if this was the case for people who are poorly nourished, they go downhill fast. People who are well nourished, they can tolerate moderate amounts of exposure to all kinds of chemicals, which is why we're strengthening people. That's a picture of a well-balanced plate. I'm going to go quick now because my time's about up. And I love a good snack plate. Next. And I love seeds and nuts. So I was thinking about what food could you add to your diet that would give you power, because people are lacking power. And I mentioned various kinds of seeds and various kinds of nuts, and seeds are really the source of life. Life grows out of a good seed. And you can eat a handful of seeds 2 or 3 times a day, as well as what I call nutty buddies. Next. The road to health is paved with good intestines, not good intentions. Here's foods that support our gut microbiome. And these are many health foods and many fermented foods. I love beverages. I love to teach beverages. I love to host cocktail party, mocktail parties, non-alcoholic parties with teas and waters and juices and tonics and tinctures and broths. So there's lots of ways we can hydrate ourselves besides just drinking water or filtered water. Application. Well, what ideas made an impression on you? How can this inform new food choices? What might be a commitment for you this week? And with whom can you share this approach? Eating together is a path to peace. Dinner parties can change the world. I strongly believe that. A good dinner party really pulls people together. And here's Bauman Wellness Nutrition Resources, very deep. This is what I've done for the last 40 or 50 years. And I'd like to share these with people and disseminate this out into the community.
The visual arts really helps us to express our feelings and facilitate verbal communication. And the way it does that is by revealing things through symbols that maybe we can't just quite put into words. If we're feeling a certain emotion or we've got some jumbled thoughts in our head and we sort of have an idea what's going on, but we're just not sure how to pinpoint it or even how to verbalize it, just taking out a piece of paper and drawing a picture, a lot of times what we have inside of us will just come out through the paper. And then we can be witness to it and look at what we've drawn and think, oh, is that how I'm feeling right now? Or is that kind of what these thoughts are that are jumbled in my head? So the visual arts that we create, or even the visual arts that we witness in a museum or galleries or other places where we see paintings or sculptures or whatnot, photography, these are an opportunity for us to really think about how am I relating to this piece of art and how is it helping to express things that are inside of me that maybe, again, I'm just not quite finding the words for. And then it also exercises our mental muscles, helping nourish our brain and also leading to a process of repair and healing. It can be a very cathartic and healing process to understand, again, how it is that we're bringing ourselves onto that piece of paper because we're learning about ourselves. And if there's some healing that needs to be done, that can also be an aid in that healing process. So this is just again, not an exhaustive list, but just to give some samples of what do we mean by visual arts? What are some things that I can be, again, looking at that other people have made or thinking about what I can even make at home? Examples are painting, drawing, printmaking, sculpture, ceramics, design, even on the computer. There's things that you can design on a computer. I don't know about all of you guys. I love using a program called Canva because I'm not a graphic designer, but I can go to Canva and feel like a graphic designer, and I just love it. So highly recommend canva.com if you want to make really cool, posters or pictures or things. And then just really any arts and crafts, anything that you kind of physically make with your hands. My mom does card making. She works with a company called Stampin' Up, and she uses stamping making products and makes homemade greeting cards. And she shared with me too that even just the process of making those cards, she makes each of her cards with love, and she just feels so wonderful engaging in that creative process. And she really notices how uplifted she feels when she engages in creative arts. So I want to be able to have an opportunity to share that feeling with you. What I'm going to do is walk us through a guided activity where we're going to draw something together. But just like I said, you didn't have to have any prior art making experience. You don't need to worry about worrying about whether or not you can draw. I feel like I'm one of those people that I cannot draw, but I can totally do this activity because it's all guided prompts and you just follow the prompt and then boom, you have a picture. This is an activity called structured doodling. Did any of us love to doodle when we were kids? Like if we got bored, we would just pick the corner of our paper and just start because doodling is really fun. So we're going to do a structured doodle where I'm just going to tell you to make different lines and shapes, and then you can just make it however you want. Here's the first prompt. With your colored utensil, whatever you choose to use, take your piece of paper and just start by drawing a really large shape all the way around your paper. And it can be any shape you want. It can be circular, it can be square or rectangle, like any shape you want. Just make a shape all the way around your paper. Okay. And then once you've made that outer shape, then inside that big shape that you made, draw a curved, straight, or squiggly lines inside. So just draw a bunch of lines inside. And again, they can be curved, they can be squiggly, they can be straight, whatever shape you want to make them. And then the final prompt is after you've made all of your lines inside, you can start coloring them in. If you see little sections where you're like, okay, I think I see a little shape within a shape here and I want to just color it in, you can just begin to fill in any of the smaller abstract shapes with a pattern or design of your choosing. You can fully color it in or you can draw more patterns within your bigger patterns. And we'll give everyone just maybe 2 more minutes to go ahead and fill in whatever additional patterns you want to do. Just thinking about what was the experience like? What did you notice as you were drawing? Did anything surprise you? Did it feel easy to just start filling in some of the patterns, or were there ever a point where it felt kind of challenging? And how do you feel now compared to when you felt when you started this activity? Do you notice any shifts or differences just physically or emotionally from doing this activity?